Welcome to the Less Insurance Dependence Podcast. I'm your host, Lester De Alwis. This podcast is dedicated to helping dental professionals build stronger, more profitable practices with less reliance on insurance. So, today I am honored to welcome Katherine Eitel Belt, founder and CEO of LionSpeak, and the creator of the Lioness Principle. Katherine is known across the US, Canada, and the UK as dentistry's unscripted communication expert, a certified speaking professional, and the author of the upcoming book, Something's Gotta Change: Mastering Courageous Conversations to Create Clarity and Inspire Change. For 35 years, she's coached dental teams and leaders on the conversations that actually move practices forward. And today we are talking about how those conversations connect directly to a practice's freedom from insurance. So, Catherine, welcome to the show, and we are so glad to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here. It's been a long time since I've been on your podcast, so I'm glad to be back.
Exactly, amazing, amazing. So, Catherine, from the start, you've coached dental teams for 35 years as dentistry's unscripted communication expert. Why is leadership communication the issue dental owners need to wake up right now?
Well, Lester, there are a few things that happen
Mm-hmm.
naturally in almost every single practice, especially if you have the vision for reducing your insurance dependence.
Mm-hmm.
One is friction. It happens naturally in practices. People have different ideas, people have different beliefs, people have different visions. If they think, well, if I owned the practice, I wouldn't do this or I'd do it differently. So it creates friction. There's also naturally occurring confusion. Rarely do all the team members see the future objectives and the steps to achieve those objectives the same way we do as owners or as managers or leaders, team leaders. And so there often is confusion, and
Mm-hmm.
that all leads to underperformance, right? And disappointment. So those things happen naturally in most small businesses and in most practices. And so there's only one thing else that helps with that, and that is leadership. That is the way that those owners and managers communicate differently to alleviate the friction, erase the confusion, and lift the underperformance. So, if you're experiencing friction, confusion, and underperformance, which most of your listeners probably are to some degree, then
Yeah.
everything else that is going to happen, because those happen naturally, everything
Mm-hmm.
else that's going to be different than that you create will be created through leadership communication. So that is why I think it is so important. And there's another reason, and that is that we're in an employment labor shortage. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And all of the projections are that there is no end in sight for that right now. And so if the future holds continuing tightening of the labor market, then
Mm-hmm.
the practices that will score the highest performing employees or employees at all will be the
Mm-hmm.
ones that have the best culture, that
Mm-hmm.
have the most connection with their employees, and that offer ongoing coaching, because that is what the younger generational workers statistically are telling us that is appealing to them is connection,
Right.
positive culture, and ongoing coaching. And so if you've developed that kind of leadership in your practice and that kind of community in your practice, then you're going to rise above those and going to be much more successful with an initiative like reducing insurance.
Exactly. I think they all go hand in hand, like
They do.
leadership and communication.
Mhm.
If one is not doing well, of course, the other will not do well as well. So both has to go in the same direction.
Right.
So so you said most leaders avoid the conversations that matter the most. What does that avoidance really cost a practice trying to lower its insurance dependence?
Well, I think it's a natural human state to avoid conversations that we fear won't go well or
Mm,
that will meet with resistance. We tend to
mm-hmm,
avoid those, but I contend we avoid them because in the past, we have experienced that they haven't gone, similar conversations haven't gone well. So of course we would naturally resist that and avoid it. I always introduce leaders to this idea of reframing conflict. Conflict in and of itself, it can actually be a good thing. Conflict
Yeah.
says we have a variety of opinions and ideas, and it says that we have some new things to talk about. So, for example, there are some counselors that I follow, like marriage counselors or family counselors or personal
Mm-hmm.
counselors. I follow them and their work. And many of them have said a version of if your relationship, whatever that is, a personal or professional, has no conflict, you're likely not growing. It seems like you'd want no conflict, but without some level of conflict, healthy conflict, you're actually not
Mm-hmm.
growing because that means there's no difference of opinion, there's no new ideas, there's nothing to. So, if we could reframe, like if conflict wasn't a bad thing, and if our experience of conflict could get better by just using or learning a few new skills, then we'd have a whole different relationship with it and likely wouldn't avoid it. The cost of avoiding it is essentially misalignment. We spend at LionSpeak an
Mm-hmm.
enormous amount of time helping our clients to gain alignment
Mm-hmm.
between leaders, owners and leaders, and
Mm-hmm.
employees on where are we going, what are we building, what does the future look like if we're successful, and who do we need to be or become along the way. If we can get alignment on that, you can pretty much do anything you want. You can accomplish anything you want, including insurance independence and great
Yeah.
productivity. So it's all about alignment. And the vehicle that starts you off on the road of alignment is something we call the invitation conversation. So I'm going to share with your listeners a couple of resources, but one of them is going to be kind of a flow chart that we call the Leadership Conversation Trifecta. It's three
Mm-hmm.
conversations, it's a hierarchy. And I contend, so the conversations are first the invitation conversation. I'll explain what that is. Then
Mm-hmm.
that leads to a ongoing coaching conversations, very different than supervisory conversations. And then
Yeah.
occasionally you have to have what we call a courageous conversation, which is more of a confronting a boundary or confronting a standard that's not being met, right? So,
Yeah.
but I contend that if you have the first two, if you have the invitation conversation well with your team and you coach well, that you'll have fewer courageous conversations. And when you do have to have them, they'll go better. So the invitation
Yeah.
conversation requires that owners clarify what they want and what they're building and what their vision is for the future. So, in your listener's case, they're probably listening to this because part of their vision is they'd like to be free from insurance involvement. They'd like to free themselves from that. But they want to do
Yeah.
it responsibly and successfully. So, the invitation conversation says no owner of any small business or practice should have to apologize for creating what they want or should
Yeah.
have to justify it. They just need to state it clearly. This is where I'm going. This is what I aspire to. This is what I dream of.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to create a team and
Mm-hmm.
build a team that aligns and is as excited about this future and helping me create this future as I am. And I respect if you listen to my vision and my future and my values and standards, and you decide that you're not in alignment. I would respect that. We all have our own individual career paths to follow. So, my job is to get clear on it as an owner and to make sure that I'm presenting it clearly so that you can make the best decision for you. But if you walk across the threshold tomorrow morning, you are essentially raising your hand and saying, I sign up for your vision. I sign up for
Mm-hmm.
your values. I sign up for that work. I sign up for that push and that coaching. I'm in. And if you say you're in, then it shouldn't surprise you that we now evolve into the next conversation in that trifecta, which is ongoing, regular monthly coaching.
Yeah.
And so do you see how that, but without them
Mm-hmm.
voluntarily saying, I'm in, then it's like you're the mean bad boss that is
Mm-hmm.
essentially saying you have to do this. Nobody has to do
Mm-hmm.
anything, right? They can
Exactly.
work anywhere they want to, and you can hire or fire anyone you want to. So this is not about have to or forcing or demanding. The new generation of work and the new generation of successful practices are practices where the owners understand how to invite people in of their own free will, and to say, if you don't have to know how to do it, but you do have to want to know how to do
Mm-hmm.
it, because we're going here and it will require
Yeah.
these things. And so it's respecting that people are at choice, inviting them into your journey. And if they choose, then we go into coaching and we coach together to gain the skills we need to be able to reach this vision. And so that's often the piece that's missing, is that invitation. And that's why we avoid it. We think we have to force people to do things when in fact we don't. We have to invite
Mm-hmm.
them in and then coach them through whatever skills they need. That's a very different paradigm.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's a lot of that's a lot of good insights. I think our listeners are going to enjoy from this conversation, and
good.
also that resource you just mentioned
Yeah.
that we'll be having in the show notes. And from what I understood, alignment is very important in all the
Mhm.
work we do. If there's no alignment, there's nothing you could do.
Right.
Of course, alignment is very important. So now, your courageous conversations framework, like you mentioned, gives leaders a clear way forward. So, where does a dentist start if their team isn't yet hitting the standards needed to drop a PPO plan?
Yeah, so you're going to run into that. And I would, number one, say expect it. Expect
Mm-hmm.
people not to do this perfectly. Like, change is
Yeah.
messy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have to make mistakes, okay, not repeated, same mistakes repeated. Of course, that's not all right. But if you're asking people to step out and say things differently, organize things differently, present things differently to patients or to each other, they're not going to do it perfect right out of the chute. So I find a lot of practices have very high perfectionist tendencies, in which in those cultures mistakes are really a bad thing. They're classified as a bad thing, and all of our actions and our communication speaks to how bad it is to make a mistake. So leaders have to work on making, if we're going to introduce massive change, we have to
Mm-hmm.
make the stumbles and the messiness of gaining those skills okay. We have to
Mm-hmm.
normalize it. So that's one thing. The other is just kind of what we've been talking about, teeing it up to say nobody has to do anything here. You're free to choose. If you choose to join us, here's where we're going and here are the skills. And you will be required to
Mm-hmm.
grow into these skills quickly. Now, that may mean that you provide an outside coach. That may mean that we're all going to listen to a podcast like this and gain some skills. That might mean that we're going to do a book club in our practice and read a book that helps us with these skills, and we're going to discuss it. It
Yeah.
might mean that you're going to have a mentor or shadow someone who's already, excelling at these skills. So the variety of how we get better is huge, but the act of not getting better isn't on the table. So I call these what's negotiable and what's not negotiable. Going here is not negotiable. Gaining these skills, X, Y, and Z, not negotiable. How we
Mm-hmm.
do it, very negotiable. I'm open to your ideas. I'd love to know, what do you need? What do you want? How do we get there quickly together? And that's a team that is in it, right? When you present it in that way. So I think that's what it is. And you have to learn at some point, how to have a courageous conversation, because occasionally there will be someone who said they were in, but their actions don't show that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we have to have, but I'll say, Lester, right here, when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about a conflict or a confrontational conversation, I'm really passionate about this. Actually, LionSpeak, all of our
Mm-hmm.
work is based in this passion, and that is the passion of being able to say the truth, right? Here's the standard you must meet. If you work here, you don't have to work here, but if you do, you must meet this standard. In doing it in a way that uplifts the other person at the same time. and
Mm,
doesn't tear them down. That's why we avoid it. We think if we hold the standard and we speak the truth,
mm,
that we're going to somehow destroy the relationship. And I actually understand the fear that some of your listeners have right now. In this labor market,
mm,
I've had lots of doctors and managers and leaders say to me, Catherine, I would love to have these conversations, but I'm afraid that if I say, look, we're going insurance free, we are going to need to master these skills, and you haven't been on board about that. I'm afraid if I have that conversation with my employee, they're just going to quit. That conversation isn't going to go well, and they're going to quit. And then I'm going to be 6 months trying to replace them in this labor market. And I think that's a
mm,
valid concern. I think that is a real
mm,
fear. I would just like to suggest that that is sort of saying there's only two options: have the conversation and risk losing the employee, or don't have the conversation and experience that, tolerate that behavior. And that's a consequence too, right? There's a business
mm.
cost to that as well. I'm
Yeah.
suggesting there's a third option. There's a third
Okay.
option that you can learn some simple skills, that you can speak the
Hmm.
truth and preserve the relationship, uplift the other person at the same time. And that's the skill
Mm.
most leaders have not learned. And that's the skill we teach. Yeah,
Amazing. I think that third option is more of like a hybrid approach,
it is.
where you can, yeah, amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. So, before we get to the next, what I have to ask you is basically, I will take a time to pause and also give a shout out to Ekwa Marketing, who is actually sponsor for this episode. So Ekwa Marketing basically is a digital marketing agency where they offer digital marketing services for dental practices, and their team is delivering complimentary coach marketing strategy meeting for the listeners listening in. So if anyone of the listeners want to basically book a marketing strategy meeting with Equa, you can book your session at lessinsurancependence.com/MSM. What their team will do is they will look at your practice, look at where your online visibility is, and give you a roadmap on where you need to go from where you are. So now I think that is something you will need to analyze also in this road to reducing insurance dependence as you move along. So with that in mind, back to Catherine. So let's go a layer deeper on what we were just talking about. So is there a real shift in how younger team members show up at work, and how should leaders respond to that?
well, younger generations are different. I'm a baby boomer,
Hmm.
and all the boomers listening to your podcast will relate to the fact that we sometimes get the feeling, or have had the feeling or experience, that younger generations may not have the same work ethic, or may, sometimes I've heard that, they're lazy, they're entitled, they're all these different sort of labels. And the truth is, those are gross generalizations. They are different. They do expect different things. And I think there's some really
Hmm.
good things that have come out of what they expect. They're not interested in work-life balance. The research shows that they want work-life integration. In other words, they want one life. They want one life it feels as good to go to work as it feels to go to home, right? They don't want two lives
Yeah.
they're trying to balance. They want one. They
Mm.
want to feel good at work and good at home. They want to feel good during the 50 weeks they work as they do 2 weeks on vacation, like one life. And so what they're telling us is, I want to enjoy this. And to enjoy it, I need to feel connected. I need to feel passion. I need to feel engaged. And what that requires is building relationship and ongoing coaching. There are numerous, Gallup does a world workplace study every year. It just came out in April
Hmm.
for this last year. And it's a massive study that I read it every year, because it tells us what is the current workplace needing, wanting, where are they excelling, where are they not, what do we
Mm.
need to predict for the next year. And what this current research is telling us is that the main thing people want is teams that are not competitive but more collaborative, and they want ongoing coaching. They don't want coaching just at onboarding and then they never get
Mm.
coached again, or hearing feedback only at an annual review and never getting feedback throughout the year. And in many dental practices, they're not even getting an annual review because we avoid it,
Yeah.
because they haven't gone well in the past. And so at LionSpeak, we're teaching managers new ways to do annual reviews. We call them growth
Mhm.
conferences. And we have a very different way of approaching those. Also, we're recommending that you're having a minimum of a once a month, 15 to 20-minute coaching check in with each of the people that report to you. And
Mhm.
those are coaching. So coaching is different than supervising. Baby boomers, we all grew up in a supervision model that's really kind of a dead model. It came
Mhm.
out of the industrial age. It worked then, but it was based on the supervisor's got all the knowledge, the supervisor knows the answers. You made a mistake. You need to do it different. I'm going to write this up in your record. I've got all of the power and you have none. And so it worked on an assembly line kind of idea. But
Mm.
that's not where we are today. In this more informational age that we're in, supervision is scanning the environment for what's wrong and swooping in and fixing it. Coaching is scanning the same work environment with these new younger workers and noticing not necessarily what's wrong, but where is their untapped potential. Oh,
Mm.
there's some untapped potential. I see they could actually, they're smart enough. They should be doing this better. Here's some untapped potential. They're low energy. I think I see moments where they have a high energy and they're upbeat. I want more of that. And what that requires is coaching. So
Yeah.
when you have a supervisory conversation, there's a lot of sentences, periods at the end of a sentence, statements. Coaching, the bulk of coaching is questions. There's a lot of question marks at the end. You're guiding people to their answers. You're guiding people to think. I always ask my audiences, raise your hand in a minute if you want to work on a team filled with people with these characteristics. They're
Mm.
self-starters, they're problem solvers and critical thinkers. They're positive and optimistic generally. They are really good teammates. They don't really care if it's on their job description or not. If they see it, they're going to jump in and do it. They're good teammates.
Mhm.
They are accountable for
Mhm.
their actions, for their results, for their inevitable mistakes. They're self-confident, and they're good communicators. They're mature communicators. Who wants to work on a
Yeah.
team filled with people like everybody raises their hand? I raise two of my hands. That's the team I want to work on. And so I
Yeah.
say, if that's the team you want to work on, you will not find it. Well,
Mm.
occasionally, needle in a haystack, you have the interview and you go, oh my God, it's a superstar. But most people are superstars in the making, superstars waiting. And we have to, so I contend we're not likely to find that person, that superstar. We're going to build them. We're going to build them.
Mm.
And that requires coaching. So I think that's what younger generations are telling us. And you just can't check in with them once a year. You've got to have ongoing coaching and you got to train your managers to know how to coach. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, I think coaching identifies the capabilities
Yeah.
of these
Mhm.
of your team members.
Mhm.
It's very amazing. So if a dentist has one conversation they've been avoiding, what's the one move they can make this week to finally have it?
Well, if there's one conversation you've been avoiding, the one move you could make to have it this week would be, I would say, take a look at the resource. I'm gonna provide two resources. One is that trifecta I mentioned of the three conversations. The other is our Arch Courageous Conversation Framework. We use the acronym ARCH, ARCH. And
Okay.
I'm going to provide a support sheet that explains that framework. I would take a look at that. I would also do a little mindset work on yourself because
Mm-hmm.
if you go into that conversation fearful, frustrated, angry, fed up,
Mm.
resentful, any negative emotion, pessimistic, if you go into that conversation from a negative emotional platform, internal platform,
Mm.
my framework won't help you.
Mm.
So the first thing you have to do is shift yourself internally into confidence that regardless of how this conversation goes, you're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. shift to the positive mindset of everyone is at choice. I'm at
Mm.
choice and they're at choice, and I respect their choice. They're an adult professional. My job is just to make the choices clear. That's all. And to come in with non-judgment. Non-judgment. So if you can suspend your judgment, they should have done it this way. They should do it this way. They're just being, resistant, or they're so negative. We put all this judgment on them. If you can find a way to suspend that judgment and say, what if they're just exactly the way they should be as a human being? They're perfect, just the way they are. The question
Mm.
is, are they a good alignment for where I'm going? And if we aren't in good alignment right now, are they interested in getting in alignment? That's really the only
Right.
piece of the conversation that we have to figure out.
Yeah.
That takes away, you're doing it wrong, you should do it better, and you're wrong and I'm right. If we can avoid, if we can get away from needing to be right and really focus on needing to be clear
Mm-hmm.
with the choices and unattached to that outcome, then we'll do so much better and we will uplift the other person at the same time. I'll leave you with this. This is my favorite definition of a leader, of a great
Mm-hmm.
leader. It's in two parts. The first part says, in any situation, so take this
Mm-hmm.
conversation they're avoiding, in any
Yes.
situation, the person who will emerge the leader will be the person who can, one, articulate the reality of the situation, meaning they can speak the truth. You're late to work more days than you should be, right? We've agreed to present financial options or treatment options to our patient in this way and use these forms and use these tools, right? We've agreed to that. You agreed to that, and you haven't been doing it. It's so the first part is the person who will emerge the leader will be the one who can articulate the reality of the situation, right? The truth. And the second part is without any judgment, without any fear, and without any blame. Think about that.
Mm.
Who can articulate the reality of the situation, suspend their judgment, move away from fear, and not issue blame. Matter of fact, to take the blame, to say, I feel what I see in your actions is that I've not been clear about the choices. The way you're
Mm.
doing it is not on the table. What's on the table are these options, right? And I
Mm.
respect if you don't align with those. I 100% respect, and we can talk about what the next steps would be if you don't align with it. If you do align with it, I need you to do it. If you want to align with it but don't know how or have a roadblock around it, then I'm open to talking about how we can get you through that roadblock. Not
Mm.
doing it is not on the table, right? But you can decide that you don't want to, in which case we'll talk about what the other options will be, right? That would be moving you to
Yeah.
another position, maybe helping you move on to another practice where you do align. Very few people take that option. Most people now are clear me doing it my way is not on the table. Doing it this one of these ways is. And so that's how we train managers to come at this so much differently. And I love that definition because I think it is the best definition of a great communicator from a leadership position. Yeah,
Exactly. It's amazing how you just said that definition. It's very eye-opening, and I think a lot of us can take it into our own lives when we do things
sure.
and basically, I mean, apply it to our day-to-day actions with our peers.
Mhm.
And so, Catherine, I know listeners listening to this episode are going to have a lot of questions and are going to have uh, actually wanting to have a conversation with you. And I think
Sure.
that is something we always welcome. This podcast is about taking action, and we want our listeners to take action. So if anyone wants to have a chat with you or even get in contact with you, what is the best way that they can reach out to you?
Well, they can certainly go to our website, which is lionspeak,
Hmm.
lionspeak.net,
Hmm.
not .com, but .net. And check out what we have. That we have a virtual leadership academy that a
Hmm.
lot of owners, managers, and team leads come through. And we are having amazing results, training leaders to have better conversations and get the results that they want. So I'd encourage them to check that out. If you just want to check out, kind of get in relationship, and I've got a new book coming out in September. And so if you want to be on the list for that announcement, I do a Monday morning stretch. I've written that blog for almost 20 years. And every Monday morning it comes out free. So you can go to the Monday morning stretch on the website, sign up for free, and you'll get it. That's a great way. And you can shoot us an email at info@lionspeak.net, and we're happy to jump on a quick 10-15 minute call and hear what your challenges are, and then offer some solutions that LionSpeak offers for that. We have video, kind of on demand, do it yourself video programs. We have our Leadership Academy that is virtual, but it's a curriculum that we teach. And then we also we facilitate team retreats on site. They are really, we call them calibration retreats. So we're helping the owner calibrate the team with their vision, their values, and their standards. And those are amazing team retreats, and we do facilitate those. So those are essentially what we offer, and we'd love to help anyone. And then I will send for your show notes a QR code and link so that your listeners can download for free my gift to them, this ARCH framework, a support sheet, and also the conversation trifecta flowchart. Happy to share those.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Mhm.
So those resources, everything what Catherine mentioned will be in our show notes as well. So Catherine, thank you so much for spending your time with us.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.
So the biggest takeaway for me is that the path to a less insurance dependent practice doesn't start with a fee schedule. It starts with a leader who is willing to have the conversations they have been avoiding. And if you're ready to start having those conversations and ready to take action on what we covered, you can schedule a complimentary practice growth audit with Ekwa Marketing at lessinsurancedependence.com/MSM. And if you're looking for mentorship, just like we were talking before, mentorship or coaching, which basically helps you grow your practice to the next level, you can always book a complimentary coaching strategy meeting with Gary Takas at lessinsurancedependence.com/CSM. Now, building a practice that's strong enough to stand on its own takes courage. And that courage, the courage to lead, to speak up, and to hold the standard is what is important. So the dentists who do that work, build a practice that gives them freedom, not more pressure, is where what we see the most successful practices are. So thank you for listening to the Less Insurance Dependence podcast. I am Lester De Alwis, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.